to the Comedy Film Funnel. This is episode number, what, 4? Are we on 4? We are. We're on 4.
For me, it's 3.
Yeah, for you, it's 3. For me, it's 4. Today, we're doing Animal Crackers by the Marx Brothers. My name is Suzen Tekla-Kriglenska. Introduce yourself, co-host.
I'm Joe Dater, author, cartoonist, and eighth wonder of the world.
Yes. And first, I want to thank from our last episode, Corey Powell from the Science Rules! Podcast with Bill Nye, and from a ton of science writing and science reporting. And he's brilliant and funny. And I was really nervous when Joe couldn't make that episode because we haven't been doing this very long, and I'm nervous anyway. So when he said yes, I was like, you know what? It's gonna be a great episode. Like, it's a no-brainer. I knew it was gonna be a great episode, and it was. And so thank you, Corey. You just saved my life, and also gave us a absolutely fantastic episode, which was Team America. So if you haven't watched that, go and look at that episode.
It was a very good episode, and I'm glad Corey was here to fill in while I was off writing my book. And by the way, if you want to read that book, it's right there.
Yes, there it is. Yeah.
I'm just going to leave it up, and you can read the whole thing during the show. So.
Yes, and that's coming out in the fall. If you're in the future, it's already out. Buy it. Go buy it right now. Go on and go get it. So, Joe, what are we doing today?
Susan, today we're here to talk about 4 nice middle-class Jewish boys from New York who went on stage. They brought with them an anti-authoritarian, some would say anarchic attitude, and they became a sensation and inspired a generation of rebels. I'm talking, of course, about the Ramones. And I believe, and I'm going to make a case for this, that the Ramones were directly inspired by 4 other nice middle-class Jewish boys from New York called the Marx Brothers.
You know, I don't actually doubt that. I don't doubt
who did
that.
the same thing 40 years earlier and all shared a last name.
Yes. I'm eager to hear your argument, but I'm already like relatively on board as a Ramones fan and a Marx Brothers fan.
I posit that the Marx Brothers invented punk rock.
Today I'm full cosplay. I don't know if you noticed.
You're Margaret Dumont today.
Yeah, this is her signature piece of jewelry. Yeah, I'm doing Margaret Dumont. I've got fancy. I'm looking fancy. For those of you who can't see me, I'm looking fancy.
I think you look good. You look like a wealthy dowager.
I'm trying to look like a wealthy dowager. So yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, so let's get started. Now this movie came out in 1930. I have like 1,000 pages of notes. But the one thing I forgot to do was to look up the movies that came out that year. So we're just gonna do that really quick. The number 1 movie of 1930 was Whoopee. WHOOPEE exclamation point. I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, it's probably one of those like fluff movies. It's one of those like, silly movies that makes, people who are poor go to see, and all they see is a lot of tuxedos. It's like the movie in the Purple Rose of Cairo.
I'll tell you what kind of movie it is. All right. Are you sitting down?
Hold on. No, I'm not.
It's an Eddie Cantor movie. Number 1 movie of 1930. Now, Joe and
Marx Brothers came along to counteract.
We're not Eddie. I don't know. We're not Eddie Cantor fans. We don't like Eddie Cantor.
It's our goal to cancel Eddie Cantor.
We don't like Eddie.
Hashtag cancel Cantor.
Yeah, we're not big on the Cantor. And I was just watching another movie of his. The Big Pink is on Amazon Prime, I think, with Ethel Merman, and her song is terrible. The photography is terrible. The jokes are horrible. I don't know. I don't understand it. And he apparently everybody loved him. The Marx Brothers liked him. They were friends with him. He'd come by after they did their performances on Broadway, and he'd hang out with them. And they seemed pretty friendly. Everybody seems to have liked Eddie Cantor. So I don't mean to, but I don't
like Eddie Cantor. I don't care.
Get it.
I don't care if he was well liked. As far as I'm concerned, he is one of history's greatest monsters.
He's terrifying. Here's the thing. He's terrifying. Again, it's that horror movie uncanny thing. He has it. He has Fats from Magic vibe, right?
Yeah.
He has Lady Elaine Fairchild vibe. I don't know. All right. So the number 2 movie was Check and Double Check. Don't know what that is. The third was All Quiet on the Western Front. Well, yeah, I heard of that.
Yeah, that's one of those lavish musicals again. That's a Busby Berkeley.
Hell's Angels was number 4.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That
Howard Hughes.
Howard Hughes, of course.
production,
The
yeah.
Aviator, if you've seen Scorsese's movie, The Aviator, which is
Yes,
one of my favorites.
Yes.
You know all about Hell's Angels.
Animal Crackers was the number 10 movie of that year. Let's see, The Divorcee with Norma Shearer.
Worth mentioning that this 1930, and this is going to be part of our discussion of Animal Crackers, it's going to come up, is that this is before the Hays Code was enforced.
Yes.
All of these movies that came out were pre-code. The Hays Code had existed at this time, but it was not enforced until later.
Right.
Okay.
Alfred Hitchcock's Murder was out. Let me just say, Madam Satan was out. Now, that was Cecil B. DeMille movie that starred one of the stars of Animal Crackers.
Lillian Roth.
Lillian
Yes.
Roth. Cecil DeMille wasn't very happy with her, and for punishment, she was sent to go work with the Marx Brothers. That's the story. Who knows if that's true?
I don't know. I do know that her later life was very tragic, and also that I still have kind of a crush on her in this movie because she's so lovely and adorable.
She's adorable.
She's so charming.
The Return of Dr. Fu Manchu.
Yeah, I can guarantee you, Fu Manchu, not played by a Chinese actor.
Warner Alland.
Yeah, that was who played Fu Manchu.
Alland.
I mean, up until the 80s, Christopher Lee was still playing Fu Manchu in movies.
Yeah.
That was the 1980s.
Reaching the Moon with Douglas Fairbanks. Renegades with Myrna Loy. Frederick March's The Royal Family of Broadway. You know, Louise Brooks. I know more the names of the actors than the movies. Outside the Law was directed by Todd Browning. That's, you know, so anyway.
Todd Browning. Right.
Claudette Colbert and Frederick March in Manslaughter. I got to go look at all these movies. Montana Moon with Joan Crawford. I got a lot of work to do.
I'd sit and watch a lot. I'd sit and watch these because
cinephile.
Yeah, and great, like movies of that era. They're probably about 75 minutes each, so you can watch 3 of them in a row. Right. Yeah, because they would play a double feature with a newsreel and a cartoon, so you get your money's worth. It's 1930. Let's get into the mindset of 1930. Let's wash our face with Brillo pads or something unbelievably harsh like that, or
you only wash your hair like once every 2 weeks.
That's right. And you bathe in a tin tub in the middle of the kitchen because you live in a tenement with 12 other people. It's 1930, folks. We're back.
Yes, 1930. This is the year after the Depression hit. People were not happy. That included the Marx Brothers, by the way. Yeah, it was tough. We come from the generation, we're Gen X, and so our grandparents lived through that. I know my grandparents were all poor. My grandmother used to pass out from hunger. She went gray. She was completely gray by the time she was a teenager, and she was stunted growth because that's how you were when you were poor. You were poor. You were like really poor. So tell me your Animal Cracker story, because actually I know you have an Animal Cracker story about what this movie means to you. So just quickly go through that.
I saw this when I was 8 years old, and it was 1974, and it had been rediscovered and re-released to theaters at the time. It hadn't been seen for a very long time. There was a campaign that had been started by a guy at UCLA named Steve Stolyar, who wanted to get this film re-released. He started a group and he petitioned the studio to bring it out of the vault and re-release it. And it hadn't been seen for something like 40 years due to mostly rights issues. So it got re-released, and it was playing in one theater in New York City in 1974. And my dad, for some reason, decided he was going to take me to see it. And yeah, I thank him for that. A rare occasion of me thanking my dad. So there it is, because it changed my life.
How old were you?
I was 8.
Okay.
And I had no idea what I was about to see. It was when, remember they used to take you to the movies and not tell you what it was going to be? They would just drag you into a theater and sit you down, That happened a few times, And so this was one of those. I was just dragged to the theater and I sat down, and there it was. And Susan, I'm telling you, it reshifted, it reorganized the insides of my brain. Mm-hmm. My life was changed at that point. And I distinctly remember coming home from the theater, walking into our apartment with my knees bent like Groucho. And I remember saying to myself, I learned something tonight. Now I know what I want to be. I want to be like that. Then I think it was either the next day or a couple of days later, I went to school and I I brought with me a report that I had written on the Marx Brothers. I drew pictures of all four of them, and I had written a little report and, on loose leaf paper, and I presented this oral. I stood in front of the classroom and presented this report to
Just
the
voluntarily.
classroom.
You're just like
Voluntarily,
yeah.
of my own choice. I did that. It was not an assignment or anything. And I just said, "Oh, I did this thing." And the teacher was like, "Yes, please show us all, by all means." I remember I drew each of their faces like on a page like this, and there were 4 pages of it that like opened up like an accordion. I must have taped them together. And this has always been my favorite Marx Brothers film. I love them all, but I love all of the Paramount Marx Brothers films. And we're going to talk about that later, why I prefer the Paramount films and why I have some bad feelings about the MGM films. But that's another, and that's a conversation we can have later.
Yeah. They would show those on Saturday morning on TV. They started showing Marx Brothers. So I was absorbing them as a kid on Saturday mornings. And I just, definitely love them. And, we grew up with Bugs Bunny. We were the generation that they full throttle. We would have the Brady Bunch and Bugs Bunny were what we're running all afternoon when we got home from school. And we were the kind of kids who we got home from school before dinner, before homework, we were just sitting in front of the TV eating SpaghettiOs. And we were watching Bugs Bunny. And that means we were watching the Marx Brothers.
Exactly. We were watching characters that were influenced by the Marx Brothers. Yeah. Gene Wilder as Willy Wonka is part Groucho.
Yeah. There's a lot. Yeah, we certainly absorbed the Marx Brothers. So that sense of humor made sense to us. The aesthetic of what Groucho was, what Harpo was, what Chico was made sense to us very easily.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And of course, it's very kid oriented anyway, even though they were made for adults, because they're clowns. They're really clowns, is what they are. They're acting like clowns. Now, vaudeville was more like that. That was more what the mainstream adult entertainment was. They kind of say that we now enjoy more infantilized kind of entertainment, but that's not really true, because vaudeville was really like very heavy-handed clownish stuff, really.
Yeah,
right?
I mean that Groucho's wearing a makeup mustache that's painted on. It's literally like clown makeup.
Yeah. Okay, so animal crackers.
You gotta get
now, what could have been the motive of the guys that swiped the Bogart?
I got it. Robbery.
It was originally a Broadway play. And we're going to, of course, talk about the history of the Marx Brothers and talk about their other movies. But one of the sources I used for research was the annotated Marx Brothers, A Filmgoer's Guide to In-Jokes, Obscure References, and Sly Details by Matthew Coniam. It was invaluable. Again, thank God somebody did that, because you would never understand nearly half of Coconuts if it wasn't for that book. And then the other books I used as sources were Groucho, Harpo, Chico, and Sometimes Zeppo by Joe Adamson, classic book from 73-ish, from the 70s. And the much more recent Four of the Three Musketeers, The Marx Brothers on Stage by Richard S. Bader. Again, highly recommended. This one's a real tome. If it's all about their vaudeville years. But mainly what you need to know is this was a pretty big hit Broadway play, very critically acclaimed. The Marx Brothers had put out one lost silent movie, very short silent movie. It's lost to the ages. But they're
forgot the name of that. I knew the name of it, but I don't recall. Do you have the name of that?
It's some pun. It's a pun. Yeah, I'm forgetting. We'll look it up. They made it onto Broadway. Their second Broadway hit was The Coconuts, and that was the first big movie they did. And it was a very early talkie. But yeah, it was a pretty big leap from vaudeville to movies, to talkie movies. Eddie Cantor did it, and a few other people did it, but not a ton. And Marx Brothers really embody, it really is our last glimpse of what vaudeville really looked like, where we can get a little bit of that feel for what was happening on the stages back then. This film was directed by Victor Herman, which is spelled Heerman, but it's pronounced Herman. He'd worked with Mack Sennett, putting out some of that really early stuff. He was both a writer and director. He got an Oscar for adapting the version of Little Woman from 1933. The writers were Georges Kaufman, is like just an absolute legend. He got two Pulitzers of The I Sing and You Can't Take It With You. A lot of Broadway stuff, and then a lot of film stuff. He also directed. He did everything. He was an Algonquin roundtable kind of person, very good friends with Harpo, and considered one of the funniest people alive at the time back then. He wrote Dinner at 8, Stage Door, Merrily We Roll Along, The Man Who Came to Dinner, which includes a character that was based on Harpo. He also wrote Coconuts, the Coconuts, their previous production. And according to Wikipedia, he was a confirmed misogynist. Confirmed misogynist.
Confirmed, meaning he paid dues every month and got a card that he could carry around and wore a pin on his lapel.
He directed for the stage. He directed Front Page, which of course, ended up having several iterations in film. He directed his own Of the I Sing, of Mice and Men, and Guys and Dolls, which I think he won a Tony for directing. And anyway, he's a legend. So Maury Riskins, he was a real Marx Brothers person who worked very closely with the Marx Brothers, and of course was also the person who contributed to the writing of this. Also wrote Night at the Opera. He adapted Room Service, which is one of their lesser known films. He also wrote with George S. Kaufman Of the I Sing, Strike Up the Band with Gershwin. He won a Pulitzer for that. These are all Pulitzer Prize winning writers.
It's just an incredible contribution to American culture of the 20th century.
He also wrote My Man Godfried and Stage Door and His Girl Friday. So, obviously he collaborated a lot with George F. Kaufman. Now, he's interesting because when we were preparing for the show, you passed along to me some YouTube footage of Groucho talking with William F. Buckley Jr., firing line.
Yes.
Yeah. So now Maury Riskin's an interesting character because he started out as a socialist and he very famously swung completely around the other way. He became friends with Ayn Rand herself.
Yeah.
He became friends with all of these conservatives. Eventually he became friends with Ronald Reagan. He became very good friends with William Buckley. It's probably why he hooked Groucho up with William F. Buckley. And he helped financially launch the National Review. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Do you really love me?
Why don't you marry me and find out?
Lillian Roth. So she was a actress who went all the way back to vaudeville. If you want to know a lot about her, she actually wrote a biography called I'll Cry Tomorrow, which not only was a hit biography, but it was turned into a movie starring Susan Hayward. Again, she worked with Cecil B. DeMille. She worked with the Marx Brothers. She actually talks very boldly about how she was sexually abused when she was a kid.
And then her just huge problems with alcoholism.
We don't remember her so much now, but she was very well known back then.
She was very well known when she appeared on stage with Barbra Streisand. Her name was billed over Barbra Streisand's because she was a bigger draw at the time. It was sometime in the 60s.
Yeah. She was married 6 times. Six.
Yeah.
Impressive. Many movies, but of interest to me as a weirdo, Alice, Sweet Alice, which is like just this amazing horror movie with Brooke Shields. Alice, Sweet Alice. She has a small part in that.
Haven't seen that one.
She's in a movie now I have to see. I have to look this up. It's from 1979 called Boardwalk, starring Lee Strasberg and Ruth Gordon.
And there's the Rosemary's Baby Animal Crackers connection you were looking for.
Of course.
That I knew you were looking for.
Of course. It's about a bunch of street gangs terrorizing Coney Island. Lee Strasberg strangles one of them to death with his bare hands.
You know what? I've seen that movie. Right. He does it right there on the boardwalk. He's fed up. He's fed up. An old man
I only
should
saw
be
that one
terrorized.
Yeah.
He's fed up. He's had enough. I've seen that movie.
Yeah.
So,
and her sister, Ann Roth, who has she kind of shows up in the background of this movie. She just about busted up Chico's marriage. Chico had a very torrid affair with Ann Roth. So that's Lillian Roth.
You may count on me. My soul is yours, even though my body may belong to Mrs. Rittenhouse.
Why, hi.
Robert Grieg is the one who plays the butler in this.
Hives, the butler.
Hives. He's been over 100 films, and in 99 of them, he played the butler, apparently.
And I like him a lot. I like him a lot in this film, in this role. I like that he has this big rotund belly, and he's always adjusting his vest down over his big round belly.
Yeah.
The perfect move.
He's straight from the stage version of this. He was in the stage version. Lillian was not. They had someone else playing her role there. He also appeared in Horse Feathers too. He plays the teacher in the classroom, the professor that Groucho interrupts.
Oh, sure. I remember when,
And he's been in a lot of Preston Sturges movies. Some of the absolute biggest Preston Sturges movies. Preston Sturges liked him a lot. Kind of not as a lead, but just as a solid character actor kind of player. And just interestingly, again, to me as a horror fan, he's in the really cool movie, The Devil Doll, which is a Todd Browning movie from 1936. I haven't seen it in ages, but it's like a mad scientist who turns people into teeny tiny people, which it's super cool. Anyway, he's in that.
I haven't seen that one.
Yeah.
I do
Robert
like
Creed.
Todd Browning. I'm a big Freaks fan.
And the ultimate Dracula, of course. Nobody comes close to that. Oh, not except for Nosferatu. Anyway,
The Spanish version comes close to it.
Director Victor Herman, he had already heard from their filming Coconuts what absolute handfuls these guys were. So he actually assigned assistant directors to each of the Marx Brothers to sort of keep track of them during filming. There's a rumor, and the Marx Brothers themselves have. Now, here's an important thing. I certainly learned this doing other movie podcasting, from just even looking at Kubrick stuff or Polanski stuff, that you can't believe half the stuff you read. You'll read completely conflicting reports depending on who was there. And these people do make stuff up to make it more colorful. So, of course, the colorful story that everybody keeps telling is that the director, Victor Herman, had cells, actual cells for each Marx brother, little jail cells, and kept them in.
I've heard that too.
Yeah. And some people will swear, there's even biographies that say, yep, it was true, but it really probably wasn't. There was a cell prop that they used for, like, they used it sometimes, but that's probably apocryphal. According to Lillian Roth, they were coming in late, and you can barely kind of wrestle them down to start shooting till the afternoon. And then they'd be like, 5 o'clock, we're out of here. You know, it was supposed to be a 4-week shoot. It was a 16-week shoot.
Wow. That's amazing, though, because it's one of these movies that you watch and you think, oh, they tossed this off in 5 days.
And let's start talking about the movie. And then when we get to like what would be the midpoint in the play production, we'll start talking about the Marx Brothers.
Yes, indeed.
All right. We're not going to go through absolutely scene by scene, but we'll definitely hit a lot of the Marx animal crackers. Okay. So the difference between the play and the film, one of the biggest things is that a lot of songs were cut out. Very few songs remained. But so it's kind of strange that it starts with some sing-songy stuff and rhyming, and then you get pretty quickly into Hooray for Captain Spaulding. And then you don't have any more music till like somewhere in the 2/3 of the way through, you get a love song. You're like, wait, what? We have the opening, which is this gorgeous house. The house is gorgeous. The set's beautiful. This is
beautiful Art Deco set. You know.
So of course, Margaret Dumont, she is the, of course, wealthy dowager. She was, of course, in the play. The premise of the story is she's a socialite in Long Island. They're making fun of Long Island high society, which back then was really a thing, you know.
We're told the house is one of the show places of Long Island.
Yeah. And, that was Great Gatsby kind of, stuff. That's when,
right. It's first generation Great Gatsby reference.
Yeah, right. So the premise is she's putting on this big to-do, and the highlight of the to-do is in the play, it's a piece of sculpture, not a painting. She's revealing this very famous, relatively new piece of sculpture that's been all the sensation of Europe. But in the movie, it's a painting.
The Bogard.
Yeah, she's convinced this person who bought the painting purchased the $100,000 painting. It was $100,000, Joe. And
a lot of money.
Yeah. So
that's what non-fungible tokens are going for now.
Yeah.
It's a weekend party at a mansion, and there's a minor crime is committed.
So there's two things that happen. One is these competing socialites, Long Island socialites, this woman, and is it her sister or daughter or friend? The Whiteheads?
I can't quite tell.
I think she was the daughter. And there's more information in the play version, and they kind of weirdly cut stuff out from the film version so that there's not a lot of understanding a lot of times what's going on. They're just jealous of this big to-do. So they want to ruin it. So they decide, they actually, coincidentally, the daughter had made a knockoff painting of the same painting. Apparently back then, a lot of people would spend their time repainting famous paintings.
Well, these are all people who have a lot of time on their hands because they're all, like I said, they're these 1920s libertines. Yeah. And it's not even a reference to that. They literally are that. Some of these actors literally are that. This is, we're coming off the jazz age here. Yeah. These are the real deal.
Yeah. And this is so shortly after the Depression. The crash happened while they were doing this on stage. Right. So this was written before the crash happened. So in any case, they decide that they're going to steal this painting and instead put up the daughter's version of the painting just to scandalize, because it'll be obviously not very good, and it'll scandalize Mrs. Rittenhouse. And then at the same time, Mrs. Rittenhouse's daughter, played by Lillian Roth, she's got this boyfriend that she likes who's a painter, and he's done a magnificent copy of this painting himself. And she says, well, if we put your painting up and everybody thinks it's the
Bogard.
Bogard. If everybody thinks it's the Bogard, then you'll become a famous painter too. Now,
Right.
the plot of this movie, it's pretty stupid.
Light and fluffy and stupid.
To me, that kind of ruins it. Now,
Not to me. Here's the thing. It is ridiculous. It is very,
absurd.
artificial. It's very artificial.
Contrived.
And it's a cartoon, but that's what you need for the Marx Brothers.
I know,
They have to exist in a cartoon. If you try to put them in the real world, they don't make any sense. And later films, as I'm going to say, the MGM films, they try to put them in something with a little more, in a world that has a little more verisimilitude, and it doesn't make sense to me. They don't make sense in that world.
Well, let me say that I read the script of the Broadway production, and it goes down much easier because there's more detail. There's a little more fleshing out of all of this. You notice the logic leaps of it less because you get a little more absorbed. Here, it's a little more glaring because they distilled it a little bit.
Not one person who has ever watched this movie has given a rat's ass about the plot.
I don't agree with that. Anyway, so we open with the welcoming of Captain Spaulding. He's, this celebrity in their eyes because he's been all over Africa, which to them was incredibly exotic because obviously you could not travel that easily back then. So he has this grand entrance. And the song is Hooray for Captain Spaulding, which eventually would become his theme song for his show, You Bet Your Life.
Hooray for Captain Spaulding, the African explorer. Did someone call me Schnorrer? Hooray, hooray, hooray.
And he comes in on a, it's one of those things that you carry that people carry. What's it called?
he's
so they're tribal. They're supposed to be tribal Africans.
Right. Starts arguing about the fair, which is the first gag in the movie, and it's a great gag.
Well, what do I owe you?
Some hoe, some Conchita, some Noise, some Lasher.
What, from Africa to here? $1.85? That's an outrage. I told her not to take me through Australia. You know it's all ripped up. You should have come right up to Lincoln Boulevard.
Those guys are evidence from my belief that Captain Spaulding really did come back from Africa.
I was going to bring that up.
There's a theory that he's just a con artist who never went to Africa. I say he did.
I don't think he did. I think he's a con artist.
Who are those guys?
He paid a bunch of guys.
They seem authentic. They got the accent, and
I don't know.
Yeah, and then later on, he gives her an artifact from Africa. Where did he get that? Well, he could have gotten that anywhere. That could be a.
I've thought about this. I think he's a con artist. So yeah.
Well, it's up in the air. But it's better not to know. Actually, it's better not to have a definitive answer. In my mind, I believe he did go to Africa. He is. And I also believe everything he says happened there was real.
The polar bears, yeah.
He really did shoot an elephant in his pajamas.
I was sitting in front of the cabin when I bagged 6 tigers.
Oh, Captain!
6 of the biggest
Captain, did you catch 6 tigers?
I bagged them. I bagged them to go away, but they hung around all afternoon. They were the most persistent tigers I've ever seen.
So it's followed by the grand entrances of first Chico playing Ravelli.
Emmanuel Ravelli.
Yeah, Emmanuel Ravelli. And then followed by the professor. And the professor is Harpo. One thing that makes me laugh every single time, is when they take off the professor's jacket. They
We're
whip
swim
off
suit. When you see Harpo kind of undressed at the beginning of the movie, the first thing you think of is, my God, that guy's ripped.
So in the movie version, he just grabs a gun for some reason.
Yeah, that's his first. We are introduced to Harpo, and within moments, he pulls out a gun and starts randomly shooting at people for no reason. It makes
no sense, and it's just his physical comedy way of doing it. It's how he does it. It's fun. It's like he's disoriented or something.
It's utterly unmotivated. He's this aggressive, unpredictable animal almost, or like a child who's lashing out. You never know.
No, but he's not lashing out. No. He's just he's just accidentally shooting off this gun.
Chaos and mischief. It's not accidental. He's aiming the gun at humans that are walking by. He turns the house into a shooting gallery within moments. And this is the Harpo that I like. This is the Harpo. I prefer Harpo as a threat. And again, this is my preference for the Paramount films, because in these films, he's an agent of chaos. He's a threat. And in later films, they made him into a sort of pathos clown. When, they moved over to MGM wanted to soften their image. And this also has to do with the code. You couldn't do what he's doing here after the code was enforced. You couldn't just pull out a gun and start randomly shooting people for no reason.
Yeah. All right. So then we have the song "Hello, I Must Be Going," which is great.
I'll do anything you say. In fact, I'll even stay. But I must be going.
We got to mention Groucho when they do the Captain Spaulding song. I mentioned Harpo's physicality, but I'm absolutely enamored and in love with Groucho's physicality. And during the Captain Spaulding song, what he's doing with his body is just so wonderful to watch.
Yeah, the dancing, yeah.
There's a point at which he starts dancing and it looks like he's in slow motion and the rest of the crowd isn't. I don't know how he does it. He somehow does it and it looks like they've slowed down the film, but everybody else is normal. And then he does that little leg twist move. And every time he does that leg twist move, I die a little because it's so wonderful. He kicks one leg backwards and then twists it around and then does it with the other leg. And I've tried to do it and it's not easy.
So at the beginning here, we have also the classic Harpo joke. He designed this joke on vaudeville where he just starts running after a girl, just tears into a sprint.
Chasing women, literally.
A girl, literally chasing girls. Now, it's interesting because, I had problems with Pepe Le Pew. I have problems with aggressive men jokes. I don't know why. I love it when Harpo does that. It's so funny. It's so cute. And, you kind of just know he's not going to do something terrible if he catches them. I think he has enough of innocence, even from the earliest films, that you just kind of get that feeling like it's going to be okay. It's just cute. There's something. Now, maybe I'm being hypocritical, but I find it really cute and funny. I
just wonder how he's not going to do anything bad, because later in the film, he tries to break a woman's arm.
Now, this movie is chock full of puns. Oh, I said chock full of, first of all, which I'm sorry. I keep saying that and I got to stop. But also I had complained recently about how much I hate puns.
I'd buy you a parachute if I thought it wouldn't open. Hey, I got parachutes.
But this is a good use. This is one of those better uses of puns. The Marx Brothers are allowed. They can get away with some terrible. Some of them are terrible.
How much would you want to run into an open manhole? Just the cover charge.
Well, drop in sometime.
Sewer.
I
love that. It took me years to figure out that he was saying sure.
Yeah.
And that was the only part of that joke that it took me a while to figure out. I always wondered why he punctuated it by saying sewer.
The cover's good.
Yeah.
The sewer.
Just the cover charge.
Just
well,
the cover
drop
charge.
in
That's
sometime.
a good joke. That's
sure.
A good joke. Sewer. I think that's pretty awful, actually.
Listen, if you have a problem with puns, great. But if you're going to give a pun pass to anybody, it's Chico Marx.
Yeah, I agree.
That's who you give a pun pass to.
And who knows if they were the first ones to do the bigamy joke.
What do you say? Are we all going to get married?
All of us?
All of us.
But that's bigamy.
Yes, and it's bigamy, too.
I think they must be the first. I think they were the first.
When we get to the bigamy joke, when Groucho is sort of jokingly romancing Rittenhouse and this other woman,
both
Whitehead,
Mrs. Rittenhouse and Mrs. Whitehead at the same time.
He goes into this very strange bit of dialogue that to us nowadays mostly makes no sense. And it's actually a throwback to a famous Eugene O'Neill play from the time called Strange Interlude.
Right.
It was a huge sensation. And it was this, what happened in Eugene O'Neill's Strange Interlude famously is the actors would just freeze on stage, they'd be like at a party talking and suddenly everybody would freeze and one actor would face the audience and start saying what was on their mind.
And he says, pardon me while I have a strange interlude. He breaks the fourth wall and comes right up to the camera and says these very funny things like, parties, people talk of parties. I came here for a party. And what happened? Nothing, not even ice cream. This would be a better world for children if the parents had to eat the spinach. I love Chandler in this movie. I think the actor who plays him is very, very good. He's a perfect, clueless windbag. One of the things I love about Chandler is that he really is A.B. the Fishman.
You are wrong, I tell you. I told you before, you are mistaken.
He come from Czechoslovakia, and I know who it is. That's A.B. the fish peddler from Czechoslovakia.
Yeah, he's A.B. Fishmonger gone good. He really is a millionaire now, I guess. He did well. He just
did well. Yeah, but it's not a joke. He really is A.B. the Fishman. I love the whole run about the nickel, the 8-cent nickel.
The 8-cent nickel is very good.
Just complete insanity.
Oh, do you know what this country needs today?
What?
A 7-cent nickel. Yes, sirree. We've been using the 5-cent nickel in this country since 1492. Now, that's pretty near 100 years, daylight saving. Now, why not give the 7-cent nickel a chance? If that works out, next year we could have an 8-cent nickel. Think what that would mean. You could go to a newsstand, buy a 3-cent newspaper, and get the same nickel back again.
And, of course, this bit also famously includes him flubbing his line and calling Groucho Chandler.
Well, tell me, Captain Chandler. Excuse me, Spaulding is the name.
Spaulding, that's right.
Yeah.
I'm Spaulding and you're Chandler.
Yeah.
Let's have no more of that either, eh?
Oh.
Bad enough being Spaulding.
Well, tell me, Captain Spaulding. Spaulding is the name,
That's
yes?
right, that's
Spaulding.
right.
Yes.
I'm Chan.
No, no.
I'm Spaulding.
Spaulding?
Can I look at a program a minute?
Now that is in the play. Okay, that's in the play. Now, my first yes,
no.
it is. Yep. Now, my first instinct on that was he at some point, because he was in the original play, so at some point he flubbed that line, and they cracked the audience up so much ad-libbing that they kept it in because it's in the script. It's in the play script, but I'm sure it was like a later version of the play script.
That's interesting.
So the play script I saw was, I think, the one that Reiskin was looking at when he was touring with them and rewriting it, trying to adapt it to the screen.
I just assumed it happened on camera and they just went with it.
That's what the annotated, the guy who read annotated guesses that also. I think that makes sense. Now, Chico and Harpo were master bridge players.
The bridge scene, one of my favorites. And I love when Chico says to Margaret Dumont, so what do you play for? And she says, oh, just small stakes. And he says, and French fried potatoes.
Yeah.
I love that bit.
This is one of the more mean scenes where, Harpo is
absolutely horrifying. I love it.
Why, we play all kinds of games. We play blackjack, soccer.
And he punches
Margaret Dumont in the stomach and lifts her off the ground with each punch to the abdomen.
It's a bit much, it's a bit mean. It's a bit like scary almost. Now, I'll tell you that like Ann Miller, she was like 15 when she worked with them. She had told them she was 18, but she was like 15 when she worked with them in, I'm forgetting which movie, which we'll get to. But she said Harpo was very scary to her as a young girl. Like he was kind of aggressive. Now Harpo is famously a very nice man. Like as a human being. Like most people say, he was a wonderful, sweet, very nice man. Children loved him and animals loved him and the whole thing. But in those early years, and now we should also say that they weren't that young when they were making these films.
They were about 40. They were all about 40.
They were all about 40. Yeah, they were in their 40s. So they had this long career, and the films didn't start happening until they were in their 40s, which is really interesting. So, all right. So he wasn't a kid, but they were used to that lifestyle where they were big. These brothers were all big womanizers. Very big womanizers, very, very big womanizers. And so they were kind of used to that culture. We talk about the 70s being like that. Well, vaudeville was like that too. But the card game is hysterical. The funniest part to me, absolutely, is Harpo's shuffling the deck, completely shuffling without shuffling, and then dealing the cards, licking his finger, and then dealing with it. Just two hands completely disconnected, doing things that were normally done with one hand, with two hands.
The funniest thing to me is him just coming up with an endless number of ace of spades, just one after another. Ace of spades, ace of spades, ace of spades. And I think Margaret Dumont says, how could he have two ace of spades? And Chico says, oh, he's got thousands of them. Yeah. And then it ends in the most wonderful way. It ends with total chaos, and the two ladies get up to leave, and the one woman realizes that her shoes are gone. Harpo is wearing her shoes. And he gets up, and Chico's so happy. Hey, you took a lady's shoes. Harpo is wearing her shoes and is so happy to be wearing them. He didn't just steal her shoes. He put them on. Yeah. And he's walking around in them.
Yeah.
He's very happy to be wearing ladies' shoes. And this, to me, is very important because it tells you something about these characters. They are outsiders. Yeah. And they are outside society in a way that they have no need for these gender roles. It doesn't matter to Harpo if he's wearing ladies' shoes or not. He doesn't need to be part of this traditional, power structure of males and females. It's it's what I get from that scene anyway.
It's like Crazy Cat. It's like,
yeah, right. It cements their status as being permanent outsiders.
Well, one of my favorite, actually, the joke that comes right before the card game starts, Chico goes something like, well, we're not making any money. We got to start playing cards so we can start winning money. We're going to end up in an old lady's home. You wouldn't want that, would you? And Harpo's like,
oh, yeah.
And I thought that was so cute.
It's the old ladies' home.
Like, sure.
Yeah.
I'd love to be in an old ladies' home.
Right.
I love that joke. I love that
Yeah.
joke. Again, it's the same thing where you're just like,
that's no good.
Harpo's just innocent enough that he's like, yeah, that'd be a ball. I would have a ball in an old ladies' home,
Well, I think it's old ladies, young ladies. He just likes that it's going to be
he just
ladies.
loves Harpo is like Pee Wee Herman, but with a sexuality to him, and it's like he's like an adult,
right,
girl adult.
exactly. And that's another thing is what MGM did later on was neutered them, took away their being sexually aggressive because that was against the code, and made them so that the only thing they can do is help the romantic subplot along. All they can do is help the two young lovebirds get together. But you never, like in those later films, they don't pursue any sexual or romantic interests of their own anymore.
Well, there's a happy medium. So if you read you really read all these bios and histories, they were, there's the questionable stuff in their life stories about women, that you're sure like their mother kind of ran what they called a chick farm, which was her trying to procure their chorus girls. She had complete control over that. And, apparently if you wanted to work your way into being, for their stage shows, if you wanted to work your way up the ranks, you had to play along, if you know what I mean. So it's like, there's probably a lot of not cool stuff going on, and that trickled into the movies. And of course it got year by year and decade by decade more and more tampered down, which is a good thing. I would say it's a good thing. But I agree with you. I love it when Harp is chasing after girls. I think it's so cute, but it's a continuum, and that other end of that continuum is a little scary. So I
agree.
These are
sure.
So, all right.
Sure.
We're going to get back to this though, at the end of the movie, because it's one of my favorite things about this movie. Okay. So then the storm comes, the people start to enact this plot of changing out the paintings, and a storm comes in, there's a blackout. And so that's the perfect opportunity. And just so you know, in that blackout scene, those are not the Marx Brothers. Those are stand-ins. They use their voices. They dub the voices in.
Oh, that's interesting.
But yeah, if you look carefully, those are not them. So another big moment is the piano room scene where we actually see Chico playing piano. And so, so this is one of those movies that, thank goodness to me, has a piano and a harp performance, which I think are essential. I love the harp and the piano performances. I need them.
Well, this is my favorite Chico musical scene because Groucho heckles it throughout.
Yeah.
And his heckling is very, very funny to me.
Say, if you get near a song, play it. I can't think of the finish. That's strange, and I can't think of anything else.
But he does that stuff with his fingers, which is so much fun to watch, and it's a lot of fun for me. Of all the movies where he plays the piano and does a little musical thing, that one's my favorite. I have a confession to make.
Okay.
I'm always bored by the harp stuff.
Oh man.
I kind of skip over it. Mm-hmm. I'm always bored when Harpo gets the harp out. I don't know why. It's to me, it's a little bit like when Jim Nabors would go on Merv and then he would sing an operatic song. It just always like that thing of like, oh, look, this goofy guy has this musical talent. Isn't that great? It always seemed very corny to me.
I suppose it's a matter of taste. I think it's gorgeous. Like, I think the harp sounds gorgeous. I think it's a beautiful instrument. I love all harp playing, auto harp, regular harp, classical harp. And
mouth harp. How about mouth harp?
He's just amazing.
Doing, 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 doing.
So I always, since I was a little kid, I always loved the sound of that harp and his playing of it. I love it. I love it. So, but again, it's a little bit of a matter of taste. The piano is a more crowd pleasing kind of thing.
I don't know. It's always a little like Frank Fontaine. It's a little like Crazy Guggenheim on the Jackie Gleason show.
Yeah.
They were, crazy, sing a song. And then suddenly he would have this beautiful operatic voice. People who are under the age of 70 have no idea what I'm referring to.
We want a senior crowd as much as anything else.
We like,
Generation Z.
I know.
We want them all.
I want a crowd that's half my age, seniors. Yeah, it's also, there's a very risque joke where he says, and now he will play Somewhere My Love Lies Sleeping with a male chorus. Yeah, that's because it was pre-code. They got away with that.
Then he introduces this big chest as a gift to Mrs.
Right,
Rittenhouse.
And that has a super risque joke.
This is a hope chest for a guinea pig. Oh, what is it? This magnificent chest, this magnificent chest, I now take great pleasure in presenting to you with my compliments.
Well, interestingly, also that chest is just kind of interesting because it just goes nowhere, right? And the joke is strange because he says it's a hope chest for a guinea pig, which
Right.
doesn't really make sense.
Well, he's
So,
being sarcastic. She says, well, what is this? And he's being
well,
sarcastic.
the original joke in the play was it's a matchbox for an elephant, which makes much more sense because elephants are huge. The other thing is now, because of the stage play, it was a sculpture instead of a painting. They did use that chest as a prop to hide the sculpture, you know what I mean? So it
Oh,
made
okay.
sense within the context of the
I see.
story to have that chest in the story. Here it makes absolutely, you're just like, okay, makes no sense. At this point, they have the big reveal at the party that the painting is not there. And then it's the wrong painting. And then the lights go out and then the painting's missing. And in the play, that's where they end Act 1. That's the big where the curtain falls. So at this point, let's take a break and start talking about let's talk a little bit about the Marx Brothers. What do you say?
Okay.
Right? So we had a little technical problem. We went away and came back. So if we look slightly different, I think my birthmark might have shifted in the interim.
Oh, there it is. There's the birthmark. Nothing but a pair of thieves, that's all. I get it at that. Well, what do you got? The birthmark.
Who are these four
these
middle
guys?
class, nice Jewish boys from New York?
I'll try to zip through this quickly. Their grandparents, I have to mention the grandparents though. So their parents were Minnie and Frenchie. Minnie and Frenchie, you know, with names like that.
So they had to be in show business.
Yeah.
Of course.
It's surprising it's not Minnow and Frencho, but
They had to
it's
be
Minnie.
in show business or the mob.
Yeah. But even better was that Minnie's parents, her father was a ventriloquist and her mother was a yodeling harp player.
A yodeling harp player.
Yeah. That harp that their grandmother had, you can imagine where that's gonna. This is a little foreshadowing.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's how Groucho got his name, because he
hated that
harp.
fucking harp.
Yeah.
Minnie's brother became a very popular vaudeville star, Al Sheen of Gallagher and Sheen.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah, Gallagher and Sheen.
They would do the bit where it was the hello, Mr. Gallagher, hello, Mr. Sheen, and that was. Why do I know that?
Say, Mr. Gallagher. Hello, Mr. Gallagher.
What's on your mind?
Do you remember the little lady dressed in black?
I certainly do.
She said, hold my baby, please. Place the child upon your knees. But you got angry, and you handed it right back.
I'll say I did.
Most of their childhood on the Upper East Side. We visited their childhood home. That's on our Patreon. For Patreons, we sat on their stoop and talked about it a little bit. You know, they were not rich. They were sleeping 4 to a bed, which was, you know, common back then. The kids would all sleep in the same bed, you know, let alone the same room. The father was a tailor, but not very successful. And eventually the mother just realized nobody was going to be making any money except her brother was loaded. And this was a route that should be pursued. And she kind of railroaded the boys. Groucho actually wanted to be a doctor. And she kind of really was a stage mom who pushed them into this. You know, let me just go through the boys. So Chico was Chico. See, I did it. I messed up. Chico was the firstborn. His name was Leonard. They actually had one child before him who died, but Chico was the firstborn. He was the mother's favorite, even though he was a brat and he was a problem. He was a real problem kid, a real juvenile delinquent. And
so the first was Deado Marx.
That's not, I suppose you could make that joke. So Chico,
he was the funniest one, by the way. Oh my God, Deado was, nobody could compete with Deado.
He was funnier than Zeppo. He was funnier than Zeppo.
Funnier than Zeppo. Come on now. Yeah, funnier than Zeppo. Amazingly enough.
Yeah. So anyway, Chico, they all dropped out of school at very young ages. You know, nobody cared back then if you went to school. Chico was gambling by the age of 9, and you know, he ended up having a bona fide gambling addiction, needed treatment. He claims
the reason for some of their later films.
Yeah, he claims that over his lifetime he lost millions. He gambled every day. So there's a lot of stories about in his childhood pawning. He even pawned the harp that his grandmother had left in the apartment. And so
they luckily yodels too.
Yeah, and they luckily bought it back. But he was pawning their bar mitzvah gifts, you know, like Harpo actually took the hands off of a watch that was given to him for his bar mitzvah so that his brother wouldn't pawn it, because he'd rather just have the watch not working than have his brother steal it and pawn it. That's how bad it was. It was really bad. He would pawn his father's customers' clothing. I mean, it was really bad. So this was a lifelong, he knew it, you know, and when he was elderly, they gave him an allowance because he just couldn't handle money at all. So
that was back when there were a lot more pawn shops in New York. Everything you see in New York now that's a Jamba Juice back then was a pawn shop.
so then the next one was Harpo, born with Harpo. Now he was known as the sweet one. He was just this very gentle guy. He was bullied. He dropped out of school the earliest out of all of them, as far as I know. And it seems to be because he was bullied. He also didn't do well in school, but it was probably because he was very shy. He really didn't want to go into showbiz. When his mom shoved him on stage, he like wet his pants, apparently. It was really like he did not want to do this. Just as far as the harp, his grandmother left it. She died. They had it sitting around the apartment. And he just at some point decided to say he actually had to save up money to have it refurbished because it was just a mess. He's completely self-taught. So his tuning was actually all wrong. And in later years, like real professional harp players did teach, he paid big bucks to get professionally trained, but his teachers would be fascinated by how he was doing it and how he was tuning. And they thought it was amazing. And then Groucho is next. I always think of Groucho as older than Harpo, but Groucho was the third or the fourth, depending on how you count. And his name was Julius. We should say Harpo's name was Adolf, but he changed it to Arthur.
I heard he changed his name in 1911. Was that the year that he did it?
It was
It was
pretty
a
early.
long time before.
Yeah, well, way before anybody
that
would
name had any stigma
way
attached
before
to it.
So yes, and then there was Zeppo and there was Gummo and Milton, and I don't even remember their names. This is a terrible synopsis.
Well,
But
Zeppo was Herbert, and
Herbert, right,
Zeppo
Herbert.
is important, and I am sick and tired of people
I
who
know,
just write off Zeppo like
That's
he's not
me.
important.
I know.
Oh, the three Marx Brothers.
Yeah,
There were
that's me.
4 Marx Brothers. Zeppo is essential to the act, and I have receipts to back that up.
Okay,
Zeppo is absolutely essential.
We'll
Yeah.
get to that.
I know a little about Gummo. Is that what I know about Gummo was that he performed with them on stage, but never in a film. So there's no film of Gummo, and nobody like now really knows what Gummo was like. But people always say, "Oh, he was the funniest." But
yeah, people say Zeppo and Gummo were the funniest.
But it's easy to say Gummo was the funniest if nobody
Very
knows
easy.
who Gummo was.
The first person who really clicked with this idea of being an entertainment was Groucho. His mother successfully shoved him into auditions, and he got hired. And eventually it ended up being the Nightingales were like 3 of the Marx Brothers and one other kid who they picked up along the way. And at some point, the mother joined the group. They called themselves the Six Mascots, and the mother was even part of it. She was a real stage mom, but also fancied herself an entertainer. And so, long story short, they flipped from being music oriented with a little comedy to being very comedy with just a little music. The first show they did was called Fun in High School, Hiskule. Now, that was a very popular vaudeville vehicle, was showing a classroom with a dunce and a teacher and the kids being rowdy. And, that was kind of a typical vaudeville scenario. And they did a very good version of it that was very successful. Groucho had a thick German accent for that. He played a German. Now, back then in vaudeville, like 95% of the comedy was about being an ethnic,
Right.
being some ethnicity. That was just so what you did. And it didn't matter if you were that ethnicity. If you could do it, you did it, right? You were an Arab, you were a Jew, you were a Italian.
It was Jews, Italians, Irish.
There was one guy who was very famous for being like a hick, country guy. There was, you'd have the wealthy, snobby people, they just all these kind of archetypes and cartoon characters. That's what vaudeville was. And that's why blackface makes a little more sense in the context of that, even though, we do find it very offensive now. And I'm sure there was a lot of offensive stuff back then, but just as a art form, it was sort of in that context a little more. So anyway, just to put Eddie Cantor into perspective, not to defend Eddie Cantor. I'm not defending
No,
Eddie
we're
Cantor.
not. We never defended Eddie Cantor on this show. Hashtag cancel Cantor.
Harpo was playing a Irish guy. I know he was calling himself Patsy Brannigan.
Right.
In the school skit, for sure. He's calling himself Patsy Brannigan. So that's the origin of Harpo. Actually, Harpo's wig is red or pink. That's why he's called Pinky or Rusty, even though we think of him as blonde.
Yeah,
he actually was red. And the origin of that was he was playing an Irish guy.
Right.
But then he wasn't good. Apparently, there's a lot of different stories, but he wasn't good at memorizing his lines. He had a little bit of a lower voice than the other guys, apparently, but also the sort of dumb, like dunce who can't speak. And there was this sort of archetype again in vaudeville. It was not that original to be this non-speaking, horn tooting kind of thing. That was actually a little bit of another vaudeville trope. And so he was kind of borrowing from that, but he just made it his own and really ran with it. That's why it's interesting to see the Marx Brothers really are the last really crystallized remnant of what vaudeville was like. You
Yeah.
really don't see. That's why they're so odd in a way. They seem kind of odd in
They
the
do,
scheme
because
of,
I don't think people realize that they were of a piece with other vaudeville acts at the
Right.
time, which now, in retrospect, they seem completely original and kind of baffling. Where did these characters come from? But they evolved from fairly standard vaudeville archetypes.
Right. Now, Groucho had to drop the German accent literally the day after the sinking of the Lusitania. It changed the entire nation's feeling about Germans. So he dropped the German thing and just became Groucho. He was, he already had, so during the school thing, he already had the grease paint mustache, I believe. And then with
And
Home Again.
I had heard a story that he tried gluing on a mustache at some point, and then when he went to light a cigar, it caught fire. And from that day forward, he said, never again. From now on, I'm painting the mustache on no matter what.
They were growing and growing in popularity, and they made the leap to Broadway. That's how popular their act was. Again, they were touring, but playing a lot in New York.
A review, which was a step up from vaudeville.
Yeah, not a lot of vaudevillians were able to do that. And so the first Broadway show was I'll Say She Is, 1924 to 1925, in the gorgeous Casino Theater. One bit that they did was about Napoleon. The only way to see that is, and I'll show a clip of that, is Rankin and Bass did a little special in 1970 where they were digging up old comedy bits. And they actually had Groucho do his role. It's a cartoon by Rankin and Bass, but they had Groucho do the voice. The other brothers are already deceased.
I must be off. Josephine, if I leave you here with these three snakes, I must be off.
Napoleon, when you go, all France is with you.
Yes, and the last time I came home, all France was with you.
All right, Coconuts. So Coconuts was their next Broadway show. It went for, I think, 3 years. It was the first one with our wonderful Margaret Dumont. She was hired to be their straight person. So let me just talk about her for 1 sec. So she had been a performer when she was younger. Her name was Daisy Juliet Baker. And she had been trained to sing opera, which you can tell, right?
Sure. But in that kind of, Clara Cluck kind of way.
So she was performing and singing and all that. But when she was 22, she got married and retired at 22 because she married a friggin' millionaire. He was a sugar heir, an industrialist. But sadly, I believe in 8 years, he died of the Spanish flu of 1918. But it's also kind of poignant because she always plays these wealthy widows.
Wealthy. Yeah, she always plays the wealthy widow. And I think she was like her character. And I think it then became sort of fashionable to say that she was playing herself, which I don't think she was.
No,
I think
Groucho
wasn't like that person at all.
Groucho would lie and say, oh, she didn't get any of the jokes and she was just playing herself. But later, everybody pretty much said, yeah, no, she totally was a professional. She knew what she was doing. Yeah. They did harass her, though. They did, it seems like that's pretty true. There's enough stories that they were constantly goosing her and playing practical jokes on her and putting frogs in her bathtub and throwing men into her train cabin if they were touring and, all that stuff. She put up with a lot of shit.
I don't think that last thing is so bad.
I think it was, I don't think she was crazy about it. Apparently they made her cry a couple times. I don't know. Again, I don't know how true all this is. There's so many stories.
I saw it years ago. I wish I could track it down. Is the clip of Groucho and Margaret Dumont being reunited on a TV show in the 1950s. Yeah. I don't know if you've seen that.
And they did scenes from Animal Crackers, right?
Yeah. And they were together, and obviously they're both much older, but you could see there was genuine affection between the two of them, that they were genuinely at that point. Obviously they're older and very nostalgic, but they seemed, it was very touching to see the two of them.
She did 7 films with them altogether, and she did altogether, 57 films. She worked with W.C. Fields, Laurel and Hardy, Jack Benny, Abbott and Costello. Anyway, we love her. Just one more thing about Coconuts, the play, which was critically acclaimed and a big, again, they just got bigger and bigger, everything. But the music was by Irving friggin' Berlin. It was so big, and talkies were becoming a thing. And so they decided to film it.
Well, I'll show you how you can make some real money. I'm going to hold an auction in a little while on Coconut Manor. You know what an auction is, eh?
Yeah, I come from Italy on the Atlantic auction.
And as that was happening, as they were negotiating with studios, and MGM and Paramount were fighting over the Marx Brothers, trying to woo them over. Paramount won, of course. But in the meantime, they came up with yet another Broadway play. This was their last one, and it is our Broadway play, Animal Crackers. And that was a shorter run, but still huge hit, huge critical acclaim. As they were performing this, obviously very strenuous where they do a lot of physical comedy and there's so much dialogue. They were running off to Astoria, Queens, right within a pretty long but doable walking distance from where you're sitting right now. And
within spitting distance of where I am right now.
And
People keep spitting on me from over there. It's why I don't go out much.
They were filming at an Astoria studio the film version of Coconuts. So they were really working hard. I mean, whenever they just didn't have a matinee, they were filming, and it was not easy. Okay, so after Animal Crackers comes Monkey Business, 1931.
Monkey Business.
Hello? Send up the captain's lunch. Hey, two. Send up his dinner, too. Who am I? I'm the captain. You want to choose upsides?
That takes place on a ship, but it's not the one with the famous ship scene where they're all crowded in the room.
Yeah.
Thelma Todd is in that. Thelma Todd was in a couple of their movies, directed by Norman Z. McLeod, written by S.J. Perlman, who was that very famous writer back then. He was all the rage humorist, very famous humorist.
I think he and Groucho were friends.
Yeah. And William B. Johnstone, who had written their earliest Broadway production. Little trivia, William B. Johnstone also wrote the song How Dry I Am, which is kind of funny. How dry I am.
Yeah, I never knew anyone wrote that song. I thought it spontaneously generated from like hobos in the Bowery.
Now, there was no Margaret Dumont in that movie.
No, there isn't. There's some mobsters, I believe. And again, of course, Chevalier.
Ah, yes, the Chevalier routine.
Yeah, it has the greatest, one of my favorite bits is the Chevalier routine.
And that goes a little bit back to I'll Say She Is.
When the nightingales could sing like you, they sing much sweeter than they do, 'cause you brought a new kind of love to me.
That was a little bit of a ripoff of a routine they were doing.
I would think that would be something that came from the stage originally.
It's always, there's always tons of recycled stuff, you know. Why not, right? Why not? And sometimes they just tweak it a little bit, you know, things, you know, obviously Harpo pulling stuff out of his, you know, I mean, you know. So that was the first movie written to be a movie for the Marx Brothers, right?
Right. It was not translated from the stage, which is significant.
Next is Horse Feathers, which is a football-oriented movie.
It's
Joe
college.
Likes it.
It takes place at college. But it becomes about football because who the hell cares about education? That's what it really is all about. It's all about college football, not college.
1932.
Everything I told you can be found in the simplest textbook on anatomy. I'm sure my students will bear me out.
We bear you out.
When you know, again, the classroom scene, which includes the man who plays the butler in Animal Crackers, that is from, you know, one of their early vaudeville shows.
And I love Horse Feathers so much. It includes the song I'm Against It.
Yep.
Whatever it is, I'm against it. No matter what it is or who commenced it, I'm against it. And it also includes the rowboat scene, which is one of my favorites.
Oh, you're perfectly safe, Professor, in this boat.
I don't know. I was going to get a flat bottom, but the girl at the boathouse didn't have one. That's your game, is it?
Oh, throw me the lifesaver. The lifesaver. Oh, Professor.
This was the same director and the same writers as Monkey Business. That's why they kind of match nicely together. All right. Anything else about Horse Feathers before I move on?
No, because the next one is
Duck Soup.
You expecting somebody?
Duck Soup,
which probably a lot of people thought we should do instead of Animal Crackers. I know that's the one that, you know, seems to be in the year 2021 seems to be what everybody thinks of as the best Marx Brothers movie. Although it seems to change.
Arguably is, but Animal Crackers is my personal favorite.
Yeah.
For reasons that are personal. But
I'm not sure what my favorite is. I'm not sure I have a favorite, if you want to know the truth. I have I'm having a hard time.
If you say anything other than one of the Paramount films, we're not friends anymore.
So 1933, and you know, surprisingly, it wasn't a huge hit. Some people say it was a bomb, but it wasn't. It was not a bomb. It was just not. It was not a huge hit.
I'd always heard that was what ended their contract with Paramount, and that was why MGM sort of retooled them and made them into slightly different versions of their characters, and made a lot more money from them being a little more crowd pleasing. But
Well,
that
I'd
was
like,
sort of the conventional wisdom is that's what happened.
yeah, no, apparently it was a little more complicated than that. But I'd like to note that there was no piano and no harp piece in Duck Soup. I think that was a mistake. Duck Soup was directed by Leo McCarey, who also did a lot of really pretty cool movies: The Awful Truth, The Bells of St. Mary's, An Affair to Remember, and some other stuff of great significance. So Duck Soup, it is very chaotic. It definitely is even more nonsensical than ever. I mean, really, the story is just absurd, completely insane, and it's unhinged. It's unhinged. I think that's a fair word for that movie. But it's so funny that nobody cares, as we were kind of alluding to.
Depending on how you feel about Woody Allen, it's the movie that prevents him from committing suicide in Hannah and Her Sisters.
Yeah.
So you could take that one way or the other.
It's also Bananas.
That's either an endorsement or,
he considered Bananas part 2 of Duck Soup, I believe.
Well,
So
it
that's
has a
another
very
one
similar trial scene.
Yeah.
He has a trial scene that's very similar to the trial scene in Duck Soup.
Mr. Mellish, what is your nationality? Well, you might say I have 2 nationalities. Are you being coy? Well, I am an American citizen and also the president of San Marcos. I would not joke with this court if I were you. Wouldn't you, or couldn't you?
All right, so that wrapped up their Paramount time, and they ended up getting signed by MGM. The most important person to know about as far as that transition is
Zeppo, who left the group at that point.
Irving Thalberg.
And
Yeah, well,
thus
that's true.
Destroying it, in
That's
my
true,
opinion,
that's true,
because
that's true.
there's 4 Marx Brothers, not 3.
Well, Irving Thalberg at MGM, they all got along very well with him. And he had a vision for the Marx Brothers. And he said, you know what your problem is, and why Duck Soup didn't do as well, is because it was too chaotic. And you need to have heart. Sorry, Ferris Wheel. You need to have heart. You need to have a little more of a feeling when there's a evil character of being an actual evil character for people to be rooting for the Marx Brothers. That's what he felt. Respond.
He was wrong. Here's the thing. Yes, I've seen those films and I cringe at that. Night at the Opera, of course, which is, people say is their best movie. And those people are woefully misguided. Yes, it's a very well-made film. Yes, it includes some of their greatest routines. It has the contract tearing bit. It has the stateroom scene. But what people don't know is a little bit before the stateroom scene, Groucho is walking through the ship and he barges into a girl's room. It's not to make out with her. It's because he hears her crying. And he says to her very sincerely, "Is there anything I can do?"
I think that, I have to disagree with you.
That
I think
is not
you like
the Marx Brothers.
Nasty. Yeah, you like
No, and it's not. I don't like them nasty, but the point of the Marx Brothers and the reason they're so revolutionary and they're so great is that in these early Paramount films, they're pure nihilists. They're purely rebels. They don't care about anything at all. They're not rooting for one person. In the later MGM films, their image was softened. Suddenly, they seemed to have purpose. They seemed to want to help the good guys and only messed with the bad guys. And instead of chasing women around, they seem to have no sexuality at all. They seem to only exist to help the young lovers get together. But in the early films, they're true nihilists. They're true
agents of chaos.
True agents of chaos. They don't care about anything. And it's important because these early movies, especially Animal Crackers, to me, it's a satire of the upper class. But more importantly, it's just funny. But I do think that softening of their image was very much influenced by the Hays Code. The Hays Code existed in 1930, but wasn't enforced until 1935.
Yeah.
And that was when they started doing the MGM films.
I think there was a lot of logic to it. I'm not as on board with you. I think Night of the Opera is a wonderful movie. And, I understand why you would like the Paramounts better. And I'm not saying
I cringe at...
It's objectively, though, a better, objectively, if you're judging a movie in a very, very objective way, it is a better movie in that it has more logic to it. It's, technically better. The audience has more, again, reason to root for the good guys and be happy when the bad guys get
Which
their due.
to me is is beside the point of the Marx Brothers. It's
I
missing
know,
the point
but-
of the Marx
but
Brothers.
I'm
for me.
talking
What makes the
about
Marx Brothers funny is that they are just rampaging maniacs who
I'm talking about in the
have no
scheme of
regard.
in the scheme of movies, you know, if you're just looking at
I'm
movies,
sure that's why
I
it was a
know.
hit. I'm sure that's why it was a
Yeah.
hit in most of America, because they would prefer that.
But you know, I mean, you know, you have to admit, Chico playing the piano and children just being delighted. I mean, because there is always an element of.
But it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit them.
I think it's sweet. I think it's sweet. I think there was. I think you're being
okay,
a little
let me
bit
throw
more.
this out.
Yeah.
Okay, let me throw this out. Harpo in Night at the Opera is portrayed as a kind of pathos clown. He's introduced in the film literally dressed as Pagliacci.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next thing we see is his boss, who is this, you know, cartoonish villain, literally like whipping him. And it's like they might as well be playing sad violin music, you know, and it's all like feel sad for the sad clown. And I just cringe at it. I cringe. I cannot watch that.
I cringe at them repeating
It's
that.
so-
They repeat that in future Marx Brothers movies where Harpo gets kind of beat up and he's treated cruelly. And I agree. Like they hit it a little too hard, and it was sort of obvious what they were doing there. Like it was a little too obvious. But I find that a little more appealing than you do, as far as turning Harpo upside down a little bit and making him into this sweet little hero. I don't know.
Not just a sweet little hero, but this sweet little sad clown, this pathos clown.
I don't
that
look
sort
at
of
it that
stuff
way.
just it just nauseates me. It's
I don't see it quite
saccharine.
as in that extreme way as you do.
He's dressed as Pagliacci. He's literally dressed as Pagliacci.
Yeah, but that was done deliberately, and maybe it was done a little too heavy-handedly, but I'm saying the principle of it I think is okay. And I'm on board with the principle of it. You know, again, this is all on a continuum. So I'm saying that it's progress that they had to kind of, as time went on, they had to kind of drop some of that stuff because it was a little disturbing. Okay. Him punching Margaret Dumont in the stomach repeatedly, I don't think that's a bad thing that they excise that from the Marx Brothers repertoire. Okay.
Well, first of all, I don't think even in the context of the reality of the movie, he's really punching her. He's pulling the punch and he's lifting her up. And I think that's what he's actually supposed to be doing in the movie, but it's still something that she would rather
she's
not
still
be
upset. Yeah, she's upset.
experiencing. But really, if you want to read this in a kind of realistic, like, oh my God, these guys are awful to women, then you'd never watch any of their movies, because in every scene with Margaret Dumont, Groucho is simply cruel to her. He is simply insulting her and cruel to her.
Again,
and if that's going to be a problem, then we shouldn't watch a Marx Brothers movie at all.
Well, again, it's a teasing kind of thing, and he's a jerk. It's pretty clear that he's a jerk, right? Like he's trying to marry her for money.
Anyone. He doesn't care about anyone.
He wants money. He wants
but
money.
Not even.
He's a con artist.
But not even, because he seems to, like in these old films, he has many opportunities to follow through on his cons and doesn't, because he seems more interested in chaos than anything.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That's the thing I like about them in these movies.
That's what takes the bite out of it.
That is what makes it not sinister, because they're not even committed to their con. They're not even committed to it's not that they don't care about anyone but themselves. They don't care about anyone, including themselves.
All right. Here's the final thing I'm going to say is I think they could only take that Agents of Chaos thing so far. They did it many times with Paramount. How many movies was that? 1, 2, 5. They did that 5 movies for Paramount, and I would argue that they took it as far as it could go and
I agree.
It had
of that. About as short of a life as the punk movement of the 70s.
And they had to grow up. They had to grow up a little bit.
It had to burn out quickly. It was a bright fire that burned quickly.
Right.
And I agree. I agree with that. They couldn't have sustained it more, but that's the Marx Brothers to me. And
now give me now you got to give me your Zeppo thing, because I'm still confused about that. What is the deal? Why are you so into Zeppo? I don't understand.
Here's why Zeppo is important.
Okay.
Because Zeppo looks and acts straight, but he's not, because he's with those guys. And no matter what he does in these films, and in Animal Crackers, he doesn't get to do much at all. But the point is, he's with them. He's not with the straights. And there's something very, very subversive and very dangerous to me about that. Very explosive. A guy who looks and acts straight and can pass and can assimilate as one of the straights. And I'm going to call them the straights. but he's not, because when push comes to shove, when the shit hits the fan, he's not going with the straights. He's going with those guys. He is externally normal, but inside it's the same chaotic nihilism as the other three guys have.
But
And
so, all
you
right,
know
let's-
that because he's with them. He's
But
with
what about, all right,
them.
but what about, like, all right, Alan Jones, who is in both Night at the Opera and Day of the Races,
Mhm.
is basically the Zeppo role. That's basically the Zeppo role, except with a better voice and a
Yeah, but they're
better
not
acting
they're
ability.
not the same Marx Brothers in those movies.
Yeah, but I mean,
That's-
right, but can't
yeah.
you transplant Alan Jones into the other movies pretty easily?
No,
I don't
because
know.
it doesn't mean as much for a straight guy to be with them,
Yeah.
because in those movies they're friendly to the straight people as long as they're nice people. And in these movies, they're not friendly to anybody. And so the fact that Zeppo is in with them, he's stowing away in that ship in monkey business in the barrel with them. He could be walking up on the deck, but no, he's in a barrel with those other three guys.
Yeah.
That tells you something about what's going on in his head. And in Animal Crackers, he doesn't really get much to do at all. I think he only has one scene. But
He doesn't in any
Yeah.
movie. I would
but at the
argue.
end-
Let me just say.
But here's
all
my
right,
argument
go
about
ahead.
Zeppo.
Go ahead.
In Animal Crackers, towards the end of the movie, the police have arrived. There's been this robbery, and they think it could be one of the boys. It could be Harpo, or whatever. And at some point, police gather everyone for an investigation, and the four Marx Brothers appear completely mysteriously, wearing blankets and singing "My Old Kentucky Home"
Yeah.
as a barbershop quartet. And now, what is the key word in that phrase, barbershop quartet? Quartet.
I know, but
It's
I
the
don't know.
four of them. So you have to ask yourself, wait a minute, the police have arrived. So ostensibly, even though this plot is paper thin and light as a feather, the police have arrived. That counts as the shit hitting the fan in this storyline, right? The police are looking to arrest a suspect. Where do we find Zeppo? We find him with those other three guys. He's with them singing 4-part harmony. And that tells you something. He's with them. When the chips are down, when push comes to shove, he's with them. That is why Zeppo is important. That's why there are four Marx Brothers.
You're working hard to make that Zeppo thing work. I will argue that Chico could have done
Zeppo dangerous. It makes Zeppo dangerous.
Listen, I would argue that Chico could have done every single role that Zeppo did. He could have done the letter taking. He could have done what did they do in
It would have been a different scene. It would have been all about puns.
No, I disagree. I think it might have even been funnier if Chico had done it. I don't know. I think Zeppo's totally replaceable.
Chico couldn't have played Groucho's son in Horse Feathers.
What routine did he do in Horse Feathers?
I don't remember.
He didn't do anything.
It's not the point. The point is,
I can't agree with you on this one, but I appreciate your. I'm
passionate defender of Zeppo. Always.
I know. Well, that's because you grew. that was so important to you when you were young, and it was
Marx Brothers. But the mystery of Zeppo is what attracts me to him, because even if he doesn't get to do anything chaotic or crazy, you still wonder, why is he with those guys? Something's wrong with him up here.
To me,
that tells me a lot.
He feels too superfluous. He feels like he's tacked on. He really
well,
feels
felt
like
that way to him, certainly.
I know. I agree with that. I think he feels tacked on, and I think it's a shame.
And I
genuinely wonder why they didn't use him more. Was there a problem? Was he bad at memorizing lines? Did he have a drinking problem? It seems a little odd,
I think he wasn't that interested. I think he just wasn't that interested.
Yeah, well, so what's the point? What was the point? I think their mother insisted. I think it was their mom was just like, no, you got to have Zeppo with you. And also they'd make a little more money that way. But I think it was a little bit insulting. I think I would go so far. I will go this far and really upset you and say it was a little bit insulting to the audience to even have Zeppo there. That's what I think. I think a little.
No.
Yeah.
Don't you think it makes those guys more? Okay, let's say you went to see the Sex Pistols in 1977, and one guy with them looked normal and was wearing a suit and tie. Wouldn't you be more scared of that guy than any of the others?
Cheap Trick. Welcome to Cheap Trick. Yeah,
see,
I love
there it
that.
is right there.
I love that. But that's not what he was. That's not what he was. He wasn't a character.
That is what he was.
Bunny's, what is his name?
Carlos.
Bunny Carlos. Love him. Sorry, I forgot his name.
The Zeppo of Cheap. They always called him the Zeppo of Cheap Trick. I remember that.
But see, he had a character though. It was a full character. It was so cool. It was so wonderful because he was just this wonderful character that didn't fit in. Whereas Zeppo just didn't have that it wasn't a full-blown character. You didn't feel like it was a character.
I
It
think-
felt like he could have
yeah.
been anybody. It could have been Alan Jones. It could have
Well,
been.
I think he carried over from the stage because I think on stage he was the Alan Jones in those shows, and he got to sing and do all
but
these
that's
things
the
that he didn't
question
get
is
to do in the movies.
Why?
It doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is how these movies look to me when I watch them now, and what they look like to me when I watch them now is that Zeppo.
All right, so we got to move on.
He could be a serial killer. That's what it looks
that
like
would
to
have
me.
been wonderful. All right, so Night at the Opera, 1935.
We've got a contract, no matter how small it is.
Hey, wait. What does this say here, this thing here?
Oh, that's the usual clause. That's in every contract. That just says, if any of the parties participating in this contract are shown not to be in their right mind, the entire agreement is automatically nullified. That's what they call a sanity clause.
You can't fool me. There ain't no sanity clause.
Kitty Carlisle, Alan Jones, who had been in Showboat. He was no small potatoes. Directed by Sam Wood, who had done Goodbye, Mr. Chips, and was, one of the rotating directors for Gone with the Wind, believe it or not. Again, that was written by George S. Kaufman and Maury Riskins. I love that movie. And so what can I say? I appreciate it. I understand your criticisms and I agree with them to a point. I really do. I understand that. But I still think it's a really beautifully polished, and it has, again, I like the heart. I like poignancy. I like heart.
I like it almost any other time, but it's not what I go to the Marx Brothers for.
Okay.
It's just not the flavor I expect to come out of that lever when I press it. I want frozen yogurt that tastes like bitterness and anger.
Day at the Races, 1937.
Put the patient in a horizontal position.
Oh, what are you going to do now?
Be careful, gentlemen.
I don't want to examine motion, Timmy.
You can't listen to the wait.
Doctor, where are you? Oh, my. I want to get down. You left me down this very moment, Timmy.
Doctor, you can't.
I get down. I'll get down. I'll report this to Miss Stanley. You wait and see if I don't. What are you doing?
And Alan Jones again, and Mia Farrow's mommy. Speaking, I cannot.
Oh,
stop
Maureen O'Hara.
Maureen O'Hara, or Sullivan. O'Sullivan.
Maureen O'Sullivan. Sorry, different.
It was their longest movie, and yeah, it is a bit long. It needs editing. It has
a long musical number.
Well, it's wonderful. That needs to be there. That needs to be there.
Yeah,
so there's a black.
All God's.
There's a black musical number that's wonderful. And they do this dancing troupe does the Lindy Hop. Whitey's Lindy Hoppers is their dance troupe's name, and it's just one of the best,
really great,
absolutely one of the best, dance scenes in any. There's another dance scene in this where this woman is just spinning, and it is like mind-blowing how this woman can spin. It is, like just the best spinning you've ever seen. That's a little earlier in the film. But anyway, some really amazing dancing in this movie, Day of the Races. Yeah, so those are twin together. Those are both the Irving Thalberg movies. And then sadly, Irving Thalberg died shortly after this, pneumonia. And they were crushed because they really liked Irving Thalberg, and they liked what he had done with their movies. He was really the guiding force for why these movies were what they were. And I know Groucho was very upset. So there you go. Your hero was upset. I
never said Groucho was an unfeeling person, and that's why he's my hero.
Well, I think he liked those movies. I think he considered those his best movies. I believe I heard him say that. I believe that's been
a lot of people do consider those their best movies, and that's why I shun those people.
All right, so just to wrap up their lives, Chico went on he actually led a big band at one point, which included Mel Torme. It's where Mel Torme got his start. Very serious about his music, but always had this really, really grave problem of gambling. Also had a grave problem of womanizing and, barely keeping his family together. But, but they say he was a very happy guy despite it all. He was the first Marx brother to pass along into the great harp playing sky.
He was asked to be buried with a golf club.
That could be. Yeah, they all loved golf. Harpo loved croquet. They loved games. Like one of them was sprinkled. Part of him, maybe it was Harpo. Partly was sprinkled over a golf course. One of them was partly sprinkled. Maybe it's Groucho. I forget. Anyway,
yeah, it just came up this morning on cracked.com. Interesting last requests, and one of them was Chico Marx, who asked his wife to bury him with a deck of cards, a cute blonde, and a golf club.
Now, let me just mention a little more about Harpo. Harpo got married at the age of 48. He was quite late in life. He was a real womanizer, just like his brothers, but he met a Suzen. Now, I'm not crazy about the name Susan myself, but Susans are solid. We're solid. Okay.
Oh,
He made a good choice.
I know that about you.
Yeah.
I can vouch for that.
Susans are solid.
You are, in fact, solid and with a layer of nougat.
Yes. And she proposed to him 4 times. 4 times she proposed to him, and he finally said yes. And I think it's sort of goofy that we're constantly talking about our crushes on this show. Joe and I are both spinsters, by the way. We're middle-aged, unmarried people.
That's true. First marriage at 48. That's like, and then I realized, I'm 6 years older than that. And I've never been married.
Right.
And I'm fine with that. It's a choice. I've made a choice.
For me, it's not a choice. I'm just really bad at this. I'm really bad at this. I couldn't be worse. And I was to me, it's a lovely story that they got married so late. They had a very happy marriage. They were married till he died. They adopted 4 kids. He loved those kids. He was a wonderful father. But Harpo was always very special to me ever since I was a kid. When he would roll up those sleeves to play the harp, to me, that was so hot. Yeah, it was hot. And when he was chasing after girls and his whole innocent sexuality, it's a little goofy, it's a little weird, but I always was very attracted to him. And man, I wish I would have, if I was in a different time, I would have liked to have been that Susan. There's a really interesting film in his later career called, it's a television thing. It's the June Allison DuPont show, A Silent Panic. And sorry, Ferris wheel again. Now, this is where Ferris wheel comes into play here. You've been wondering what Ferris wheel has been doing there all along.
I have been wondering what the Ferris wheel has been doing there all along.
So in this DuPont special,
I'm still wondering.
Yeah, I'm about to tell you.
I'm going to keep wondering, even after you tell me.
Harpo plays a mechanical man. He's a deaf and dumb person. So, what else are you going to write for Harpo, right? Because he stays in character. But in this, it's a dramatic version of Harpo where he plays a mechanical man working in a children's toy store at Christmas time. And as he's in the window acting as the mechanical man, he witnesses a murder through the window. He sees someone being murdered and he becomes a witness. And of course, these bad guys end up chasing after him. It's a really wonderful little piece. I mean, it's nothing you don't expect. It's exactly what you imagine it to be, but he does a wonderful job. And it was directed by Arthur Hiller, very early. Arthur Hiller, he used to do a lot of television. He's the guy who did The In-Laws. He did Silver Streak. So Harpo, his character works at a toy store, and in that store, in the window, you will see this Ferris wheel. Now, this Ferris wheel was very popular back then. This is my mom's actual Ferris wheel.
Oh, okay.
And I've always kept it
looks
in
like a tin Ferris wheel.
I've always kept it in my apartments. And now this is me and the horror thing. So I like things that scare me. It's like being on a roller coaster. It makes me stronger.
What's scary about that? I see.
Every time I look at it, it chills me. It makes me stronger. So that's just my little weird, demented thing. Yeah. So anyway, when I saw this in a Harpo vehicle, I was like, see, it's more evidence that we should have.
That you were meant to be together across history, across time.
Anyway,
like Count Dracula and his lost love, Elisabetta. And you have crossed oceans of time to be with him. If only Harpo was a vampire.
If only Harpo was a vampire. That's the perfect vehicle. By the way, we're going to do What We Do in the Shadows very soon. That's up. You don't even know this, but I'm going to make you do that. But the only time he ever, ostensibly spoke ever in public, in front of the public, he always stayed in character, was when he retired. It was a year before his death, and he went on stage. It was for Alan Sherman. He I don't know, it was an Alan Sherman performance show.
Hello Mother, Hello Fada. Alan Sherman.
I don't know. Yeah. And Harpo came on stage and announced his retirement. And they say he wouldn't stop talking. He kept talking and talking and talking. It's really
I've heard a recording of Harpo's voice.
Yeah, there's like one recording, I guess.
There's one very, very brief clip that I heard. And it was him talking about the early days and him getting thrown out of a brothel for having a cold.
One night I'm playing and I felt sick. And I practically keeled off the stool. And she says, "Get that son of a bitch back on that stool, play." There was a couple of customers there.
All right, that's what we have to say about Harpo. And then finally, Groucho Julius. He, of course, now a lot of people don't know this, but he actually tried a whole bunch of times to have shows, radio shows, TV shows, and most of them failed. We know about his successes, but he actually did try a bunch of times to catch on again after the Marx Brothers, and it all kind of went bust. But he was a little hesitant to do a quiz show. He wasn't that interested in doing a quiz show. But when they explained to him that he'd be mostly, the heart of the show would be him like ad-libbing with real
the quiz
people.
Wouldn't matter that much.
Yeah, he was like, all right, yeah, let's try this. And it was huge hit, of course.
I love it. And you can still see so many of those.
So let's just say the name, You Bet Your Life, for people who don't know.
You Bet Your Life, yes.
It was started as a radio show in 1947, and it was on TV from 1950 and went on for 11 years.
There've been DVD box sets of it, and you can see it streaming on Amazon. And if you just go on YouTube and search in, you can find a lot of great clips of You Bet Your Life, especially the one with the guy who clearly disturbs Groucho with his crazy eyes. That's a great one. I think there's
I'm
one
putting that
where
clip in. Yeah, sure.
I think there's one with a young Phyllis Diller as a contestant on the show.
Yeah, there's some pretty cool celebrity cameos.
You can see the author of The Exorcist, William Peter Blatty, shows up on that at some point.
But the best part is just these normal people kind of playing along and him making fun of them.
A thing he can hang his quips on. That's all it is. That's all it is. That's really, the only real reason for it. And that's the best reason.
It nails down, that he was really one of the wittiest people who ever walked the earth. He really was just, he would just vomit funny, like he couldn't help it. Everything out of his mouth was funny.
Yeah.
Groucho was the last of the main, the three brothers to die.
Or did Zeppo outlive him?
No, I'm saying the main brothers.
I know, the main brothers. That's what I mean. Zeppo.
Yeah, the main brothers.
There were 4 main brothers.
Anyway.
He's with them. Don't you understand what I'm saying? He's with them.
Let's get back to the movie.
The movie. Okay, so let's talk about Animal Crackers. What's going on in Animal Crackers?
What we have is the painting is missing. Everybody's looking for the paintings. Everybody's calling the police.
The Earl painting. The Bogart. The Bogart.
And they're constantly folding it and rolling it up and shuffling it around. Now, this painting was worth $100,000. I don't know what it's worth now.
A good painting, you can take it out of the frame and you can fold it up, and it doesn't affect it.
And
that's the mark of a good painting.
You can use it as a blanket.
You can use it as a blanket.
So that's pretty much where we're at. We're at them. The Whitehead woman. They're looking for that painting, and they see Harpo outside sleeping with it as a blanket over him. And I love this scene because, again, talk about mean Harpo. She's established bitch, right? And so she sits next to him and she does this whole stupid thing. Oh, little Harpo, do you love anybody? How old are you?
Don't you like me? You don't. Well, I like you. I like little boys like you. By the way, how old are you? 5 years old? Why, you're just a baby, aren't you? Oh, isn't that nice? I like that. No.
She says, do you like me? And he's like, no. And, I like that they just, he's just like, yeah, no, I don't.
Going back and forth when he takes her hand, but then he tries to break her arm, and that he just goes constantly back and forth. He's unpredictable. He's like a little angry child.
So at this point he gets chloroform. So Hives, he starts off as just the butler. And before you know it, he's like he's providing chloroform, and then you find out he has a jail sentence.
That's the thing that I think is important about this movie, and one of the things I love about it is we find out that Roscoe W. Chandler is really A.B. the Fishman. They expose him as A.B. the Fishman, and he admits it. All right, I was the Fishman in Czechoslovakia.
Yeah.
And then we find out that Hives the butler has a criminal record and spent 4 years behind bars, and there's this sense of this rich facade is just about to could crumble at any moment, that everybody's just putting up this air. And if you scratch the surface of even Mrs. Rittenhouse, of Margaret Dumont, you'd find out that she doesn't even have any money or whatever. Who knows what's going on? Like, it's all just like status. It's all just like, oh my God, we have to keep up this status or else.
Now, fitting into that little scenario that you just laid out is the idea that Spaulding, the professor, and Ravelli are in it together. They are con artists. Now, if you look at the letter writing scene, they've called the police. And what's Spaulding's reaction? Oh, I've got to get my lawyer. And that's interesting.
The police are here, madam.
Oh, the police. Have them come in.
Oh, so that's your game, is it? Well, you can't shut me up. No, you can talk to my attorneys. Jamison?
Yes, sir.
Take a letter to my lawyers. I'll show you a thing or two. Or 3. Show you a thing or 3.
Oh, Captain.
Sending for the police. Take a letter to my lawyers. Sending for the police, eh? I say take a letter to my lawyers.
Well, I am taking it.
Read me what you have so far.
And so I kind of, I sort of do think that's a little bit of evidence, and it would fit in perfectly with the rest of the movie, that they are full of it, and that he's never really been to Africa, that he's a complete fraud,
I don't know. I like to think that he really is an African explorer.
Yeah, it's fun either way.
And there are 2 scenes where Groucho and Chico have an absurd conversation, and Both of those scenes are great. The second one is very interesting because that's where they're hashing out what to do about the robbery. And Groucho's reaction to Chico is of boredom. He's kind of like, he's like just rolling his eyes. And Chico is saying these things like, first, we got to find out. You ask yourself, oh, what happened? Somebody stole a picture. And then you got to ask yourself, where was the picture stolen from? It was stolen from at a house. And then you got to say to yourself, who took the picture? Somebody in that house. And then Grouch is just bored. He's rolling his eyes. He's like, this guy is an idiot. And then when Chico gets to, well, then we got to build a house next door. Suddenly Groucho is interested.
You say you're going to go to everybody in the house and ask them if they took the painting. Suppose nobody in the house took the painting.
Go to the house next door.
That's great. Suppose there isn't any house next door.
Well, then, of course, we got to build one.
Well, now you're talking. What kind of a house do you think we ought to put up, huh?
Suddenly he perks up.
Yeah, like, I know. He's like, oh, all right. Well, that
now you're talking. Because
right, which
now,
is the most absurd thing. Right?
Now it's become insanity.
Right, now it's a fantasy.
Insanity he's interested in. Now he's interested in saying, before it was giving a damn about what happened to the picture. Right. Now it's just, let's now play. In complete absurdity. And now he's interested because
it's like let's play. Yeah.
Yeah.
As we get to the end, we do what's a really, really classic. Now they were doing this bit way in the beginning of their vaudeville days, which is Harpo having silverware pour out of his arm.
Don't you know your poor old mother sits there night after night. And if you listen to me, you can't go wrong.
I can't understand what's delaying that coffee pot.
So when they were developing that on stage, they at first just had like a couple of forks fall out of his sleeve. And then they realized it was even funnier if there were more forks and spoons. And then they realized it was even funnier. And it's so funny because this kind of, this tracks back to the conversation I had with Corey, during Team America, which is, 10 seconds of vomit is funny, or spewy from Get a Life, all these jokes, the way that Chris Elliott would do this, or the way that Trey and Matt would do it, it gets unfunny and then it gets funny again. And right. I'd argue that this is interesting because this is
one of the earliest versions of
this is the earliest, and they develop it themselves, and I'm sure that was a very novel joke at the time. So they just realized from audience reaction that the longer it went, the funnier it got. It seems simple to us now, but I have a feeling that was a very novel joke, and it's still just as funny, even if it's old and we're a little more familiar with it. It's still really genuinely hysterical.
You think that Mrs. Rittenhouse's mansion is like the house in Parasite?
Yes. You
think there's like somebody secretly, like the Help are secretly, because we know that Hives is not who he says he is, right?
It's
the Help are not who they say they are. The Help are disguised. Living in the basement for 20 years.
He's certainly willing to throw her under the bus, and he certainly has a criminal record, and he certainly has chloroform.
Right.
So I think he's capable of quite a lot.
I think there's a very, very, very dark side to this showplace of Long Island.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, in the play, there's a whole scene that's left out of this movie, and so in every one of their Broadway productions, they would have a period piece kind of scene. So again, in I'll Say She Did, they had the Napoleon scene. So everybody suddenly, they didn't, and because it was kind of coming from vaudeville, there wasn't much of a setup. They just kind of had a fantasy scene where suddenly Groucho's Napoleon and the other guys are part of that period. In Coconuts, they have the scene where they have the reception and everybody's dressed up as in a Spanish kind of flavor. It was a costume scene. So in this movie, I read the script and I still don't really understand how this works, but somehow they all end up in Louis XV. This is 18th century France, Burgundy, France, Louis XV, his parlor. Mrs. Rittenhouse is the queen. Groucho is the king. And Mrs. Whitehead plays Madame du Barry.
I've seen a photo of a revival of Animal Crackers.
Yeah.
And from like recently, and everyone in the cast was wearing those like colonial, those Louis XIV outfits, and I was very confused by what part of that comes in on.
Yeah, there's a wonderful, it's one of my absolute favorite photo of Margaret Dumont and Groucho. It's such a sweet photo, but it's them in that costume, and they're kind of they're back to each other. It's so cute, and you're just like, yeah, when did that happen? Well, it happened in the play. And so that whole scene, it's them it's sort of doing something similar to the Napoleon scene where they're talking about the king having an affair. The other brothers are dressed up as the musketeers, like the three musketeers, because that was from that period. And the song, one of the songs that was cut, it was the finale song, really, was
Four of the Three Musketeers.
Four of the Three Musketeers. Yeah, that was like their finale song.
We're all of the Three Musketeers. We've been together for years. Eeny, meeny, miny, Joe is the guy with the ears.
It's a very funny scene, and it's a shame they cut it, but I guess they just felt it was too superfluous and weird. It just didn't fit. So instead, we have a different ending. Now, the ending that we see in Animal Crackers was actually the ending of Act 2, Scene 1. This took place in Act 2, Scene 1, and it was just sort of a minor incident. But this is how we end it, which is, and I love this so much. So Harpo has put the chloroform. It's such a, in a way, it's a cop-out ending. He puts the chloroform in the fly spray container.
It's the best kind of cop-out ending. It's a cop-out ending in the same way that Monty Python and the Holy Grail has a cop-out ending.
Yeah.
Where there's no ending. The movie just stops.
Yeah, the movie just stops.
It's over. And the reason is because the story doesn't matter. It's a nihilistic movie.
Right.
It's a punk movie.
So Harpo chloroforms the entire room, and I love when he chloroforms Groucho, and Groucho's leg is sticking up, and he just keeps pumping the chloroform onto Groucho's leg until it goes down. Through the whole movie, he's chasing this blonde. Through the whole movie,
this blonde who's unnamed, doesn't have lines. She's just there, and it's a runner throughout, running gag throughout the movie, that whenever he sees her, he starts literally chasing after her, and she runs away.
So in the end, the last person he comes to is her. She's already passed out. He starts kind of picking her up. And you really, because we're so used to this from the movies from the 70s and the 80s and the early 90s, we're so used to the guy then throwing the girl, this passed out girl, over his shoulder and taking her to bed.
I would never have figured that was going to happen, though.
As a person who's lived a life watching movie after movie after movie over my lifetime, including the 80s, and the 90s, and seeing all these
peephole scene in Porky's,
all these scenes, used cars. You and I were just discussing that recently, where they just grab at this woman's breast.
Questionable
all
stuff
of the
that.
Frat boy, even Animal House flirts with that, and you're just like, phew, he didn't date rape her, thank God. You know what I mean? Like, you expect that stuff. I'm sorry, but you do, because
that's why he's a hero in Animal House.
Common.
That's why
he's
Tom
a hero
Hulse is a hero, because
he didn't take advantage of the This is why I love Harpo.
Right.
This is why
he finds the girl of his dreams. She's out cold. Everybody's out cold, including her.
And it's the harmless, sweetest thing in the world.
But
and that's the way you tell that joke. So that joke, that setup is like a common setup, but this is the way you end that setup. And they were doing it in 1930, and they should be doing it in this 1970, 80, and 90 the same way.
It's beautiful.
Because that's how you end that joke. That's how you end that joke.
She's laying there unconscious. She's completely helpless. Yeah. And so what he does is, he snuggles up next to her and makes himself equally helpless.
Right, exactly. It's
beautiful.
It's so lovely. It's lovely, and it's funny. Bonus, it's really funny. It's funny. Much wittier than anything else you could do with that.
But from my reading of the film, as the Marx Brothers as these outsiders who don't care about anything, it's the perfect ending, because again, it ends not with them out for themselves. Chico says, "Hey, let's get out of here before they all wake up," and Harpo says, "No, we're all going to sleep." He just shoots him right in the face with the knockout stuff. The ending,
and it reflects the guns. It reflects the guns at the beginning. Him shooting off guns like just like maniac.
Exactly. Yeah, like a maniac. And it's just the idea that they don't care about anything, not even themselves. Nothing mattered. The painting, who cares? The robbery, who cares? Doesn't matter. Everybody's just laying unconscious.
Yep.
It's perfect. It's beautiful. I would like to read a quote from the British newspaper, The Guardian.
Okay.
Talking about the film Monkey Business, but it applies to Animal Crackers as well. The movie is full of aimless chaos. The sense of pointless rebellion throughout is as modern and anarchic as, say, punk rock. Now, I saw Animal Crackers for the first time when I was 8 years old, when it was re-released in 1974. The first live performance by the Ramones was in 1974.
There you go.
I am certain that those boys saw Animal Crackers at the same time on its re-release and were influenced by it. And I genuinely believe that the Marx Brothers, 40 years into the future, influenced and were somewhat responsible for the entire punk movement that happened in the late 70s because of Animal Crackers being released in theaters in 1974. And I have no real concrete evidence, but I have one smoking gun, which is on one of the Ramones albums. I think it's their third album. They have a song called "I'm Against It."
Yes, of course. Yeah.
And to me, that's the smoking gun. That's my exhibit A that I'm bringing to court right there.
Another piece of evidence is that the Ramones had a real sense of humor. There was, unlike, say, like some of the LA punk scene that emerged from that, like the Germs or whoever, they had less of us. They were more like, we're dead serious, we're jerks and we're dead serious. Whereas the Ramones always had a feeling of lightness. Of course, it was almost beach music, and they always had a sense of humor.
Yeah, their songs were banal and meaningless.
And like you said, the fact that they all had the same last name, that was, a winky thing. Obviously they weren't really brothers, which in itself is an act. They were part of it. Part of it was a persona. They had a very distinct persona. It was a shtick. They almost had a shtick. I'm on board, and we will insert a little Ramones right about here.
I don't know what they have to say. It makes no difference anyway. Whatever it is, I'm against it. No matter what it is or who commenced it, I'm against it.
Let's do Comedy Coda. What do you want to go first?
I'm ready. Well, I'm Comedy Coda. I'm
all right.
So ready for Comedy Coda.
All right, just to explain for first-time viewers at the end of every episode.
Who cares what the first-timers think? You noobs, you green ease. Greeners? Are they greens?
They're greenies. Greenbacks.
Greasers.
If only they were greenbacks.
We could use some greenbacks. Please do. Yeah. Send simoleons, clams, greenbacks, what have you. Smackaroos. We'll take smackaroos as well, but not Bitcoin.
Here's what Comedy Coda is. We talk about something that is not film. It's comedy, but it's not film. Anything. Could be anything, but it's not film. All right, go, Joe.
Okay. My recommendation is for a absolutely anarchic and chaotic and punk and nihilist Instagram account, which is called Cut and Paste Movies. Now, it's run by a guy called Steve Young. Steve Young was one of the main writers for The Late Show with David Letterman.
Oh yeah, I knew that. Absolutely, I knew that name. Yeah.
Until that show went off the air, until the end of that show. He's also responsible for the movie Bathtubs Over Broadway. At some point when he was curating Dave's record collection, he kept finding all these records that were the soundtracks to industrial musicals. And became fascinated with industrial musicals and ended up writing a whole book about them. And then that was made into a sort of documentary about his obsession with industrial musicals. So Steve has an Instagram account called Cut and Paste Movies. And it's the simplest, most brilliant thing I've ever seen in my life. He just takes little capsulized movie descriptions like you'd find in TV Guide, cuts them into little strips and puts them together randomly to create all new movies. It's comedy, but it's almost like avant-garde art. Almost, it's kind of like William S. Burroughs cut-ups. So I'm going to read a couple of those descriptions to you now. The Muppet Movie, 1979. Jim Henson's TV puppets upstage JFK assassin Lee Harvey Oswald. Wednesday at 4 a.m. They're showing that on Cinemax. Here's one. Wayne's World, 1992. Strong language. Wayne and Garth prevent a group of mercenaries from releasing a cloud of nerve gas in 1957 Alabama. And this co-stars Virginia Madsen and Phoebe Cates. The Abominable Dr. Phibes, 1971. Vincent Price becomes the new owner and manager of the Minnesota Twins with Timothy Busfeld. Oh, this is a classic. Die, Die, My Darling, 1965. Tallulah Bankhead as a pint-sized pachyderm with very big ears but very little self-confidence. Also starring Jason Robards and Martin Balsam. What's fun about these is when you can tell which movie it was that
Yeah, they put together.
Part of it got put into. And here's one for our purposes. Staying Alive, 1983, strong language. Satire about a snobbish student, Chris Elliott, who mistakenly signs onto a ship full of crusty men who head for the wilderness to film endangered wildlife, with Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
How long has he been doing that?
Oh, a year or two. I don't remember, but I sit there and I scroll through these one after another,
Yeah.
and I am just in pain.
I like it. I like it.
So Cut and Paste Movies on Instagram. He doesn't have enough followers.
Yeah, and I mean, I know that name. I mean, I remember him being such an amazing writer. One of the
Very funny
absolute
and lovely
central-
guy.
He was head writer, wasn't he? Head writer.
He
for a
was,
while?
yes.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Wow, that's cool. And I didn't put all that together, but yeah, I know about the industrial stuff, and that is definitely worth looking into for sure. All right, mine is, speaking of sort of industrial, I guess, is Scarfolk County, Scarfolk Council, depending on how you look at it or what you want to call it. But Scarfolk, and I tend to like British stuff. I've noticed I keep doing British stuff, but even my book from last time, Bruno actually is British, even though he's American now. But Scarfolk started as a blog. Richard Littler is the person who is behind this. He's a graphic designer and really funny writer. And he started a blog. You know what? I don't even know what year it started, but quite a bunch of years now. Richard Littler started a blog called the Scarfolk Council. And what he did was he came up with this. God damn it.
I think it's going to hit you back.
It's haunted for sure. Richard Littler.
I am afraid of it now.
It is scary.
Cover it up with a blanket or something. Throw something over it. I don't want to see
it
that.
It keeps harassing me, right?
I know.
Keeps harassing me. All right. So Scarfolk County, it's a dystopian world that Richard came up with, and it's very much set in the 70s. Scarfolk Council is ostensibly this council from this community that they are continually on this blog posting from their archives. Books that are out of print, flyers and posters that come from their town council, and even sometimes advertising and that kind of thing. And so it's a fictional northern town. It's post-industrial dystopian satire is what you would call it. And eventually it was popular enough that he came out with a couple of books collecting these works. So you have Discovering Scarfolk, and you have this, which is for kids, and it's a fake book for kids, fake textbooks.
That graphic design is perfect.
Scarfolk Annual. It's of course got this very much
naturally.
Like what Jon Stewart did with the Daily Show. They had done a fake children's book too, which is I can't recommend enough also. But this is a lot more dark and disturbing.
Yeah, I would love that. That is so right up my alley. Oh, and that graphic design, it reminds me of Look Around You.
It's like a piece with that. They're like almost a pairing together.
Yeah,
very similar.
They exist in the same universe, maybe.
There's like how to make masks out of animals. Using real animals for kids. How to make masks. This is very much inspired, obviously, Wicker Man kind of thing. Like this is the idea that there's this community that's living in a bubble. Now,
Hot Fuzz.
One of the things.
What's the town in Hot Fuzz called? It's like that, which is sort of like Wicker Man, which is sort of based on Wicker Man.
There was a series in the 1970s, 1977, called Children of the Stones. It was a UK series. There was only 7 episodes, and it was exactly that. This professor and his son moved to a community that's kind of based in a Stonehenge kind of town that has something like a Stonehenge. Oh, yeah. But of course, all the people in the town are a little bit off.
I could see this. I could see this already with that great sort of cold, clammy 70s British feel to it.
All the people in this community are trapped in a time loop, and they just go through this time loop over and over and over again, and they try to pull people from the outside in. It's really,
I would love that. Yeah.
It was made for kids, but everybody's like, why was this made for kids? So that was one of his greatest influences. It's a throwback to some of that scary stuff from the 70s, the scary PSAs that used to come out. And so anyway, he's kind of playing off that vibe. Let me just read you a couple of them.
Please.
Here's a charity appeal, a new face for Janice. This is a kind of nuclear warning kind of thing. And the scale they have of nuclear threat, it starts with cakey. The second level is fairy dust. The third is piggy. Then Daisy, Ladybird, Jam, and full tilt when a bomb is blowing your community to hell. is called Flopsy Money. This book is a little more sophisticated. Discovering Scarfolk for tourists and other trespassers. So they have a listing of things you can visit. The Scarfolk Catgut Mill. Experience for yourself the horrific conditions under which children worked during the Victorian era and see how Scarfolk Council is battling to maintain this traditional attitude to children in the workplace. View the semi-mummified 130-year-old remains of little James Pigeon, only discovered this year, jammed between the lopping gouge and scraper sever machines. James Pigeon's stuffed toys are available in the gift shop. Realistic removable fingers, battering not included. 50 pence from the sale of every James Pigeon will go towards Gone to the Dogs, the charity that cares for feral children raised by packs of wild Cocker Spaniels.
Wow.
It's so great.
It's so beautifully,
great.
Beautifully done. I love that.
You could just spend hours looking through his blog, but yeah, I can't recommend the books enough. He has stuff for sale, and that includes beer mats, these little beer mats, and Scarfolk and Environs Road and Leisure Map for Uninvited Tourists map pack. That's for sale. He's so brilliant. So that's Scarfolk County. Richard Littler. That's my comedy coda.
Awesome.
Right. So that's our show. Next episode, we're going to do What We Do in the Shadows, which
Son of Dracula. No, What We Do in the Shadows.
What They Do in the Shadows. And
second greatest vampire movie ever made.
Yeah. I'm going to conclude with my catchphrase, which I always forget. I always forget it. It is comedy is tragedy plus, and then I have to say something funny. Comedy is tragedy plus dance-offs. My personal favorite being the one in Starsky and Hutch, the parody with Ben Stiller, with Harmar Superstar, who's this wonderful recording artist who I've seen twice live, and he's fabulous. And he's in itself a very funny music recording artist. And anyway, I'm going to show that. But Dance Off, you had that with South Park with, You Got Served. And they're comedy gold, Dance Offs. We'll be back very soon.
And I'm going to go have a hot butterscotch sundae on rye bread.